All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a response video to this dude, Loner Box. He's somewhat new on the scene in terms of the bread tube folks out there. So I figured I'd respond to him. There were a couple videos that he did. I didn't really feel like getting into it. He wanted to dab on people like Sargon of Akkad. Very original. Go ahead and shit on a dude like that. It's just anyway. I also wanted to say I appreciated Glassnose's video. And I think he's right to a point, is that, we shouldn't just let people like Vosh just, run amok and not anyone say anything. Somebody got to say something. So I think he does have a point. I just don't want to become obsessed like every other video I'm talking about. But you know what? I will take your advice, though, sir. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the shout outs he gave. And I think a lot of ways we're kind of on the same track. But I just want to give that shout out right quick. And with that, let's go ahead and get into this video here. And, I'm going to try not to be too nitpicky. Actually, you know what? Why am I saying that? I am going to be nitpicky. I'm fronting. But we're going to respond to this guy, this dude, Loner Box. This is the first time I think he shows himself on stream, on a video, I should say. So let's get into it, man. Let's do it. Boink. And boink.
In 1838, in what is now South Africa, a group of Dutch settlers known as the Afrikaners faced down.
Hold on. Give me a minute there, folks. We'll leave that off for a little bit. Give it a little break. Okay. Now, let's get into it. Okay. So, number one, he talks about the... Hold on.
An army of indigenous Zulu warriors by the banks of the Income River. With no more than 464 fighters, they won a decisive victory against an army of over 10,000 Zulus. They called it the Battle of the Blood River. Their victory, despite being grossly...
Once again, he couldn't even use footage from the movie Zulu that includes the Boers on horseback. Or, little scenes where they're actually talking with, where he's talking with Chad, the British commander there, the Welshman. He doesn't do that, but that's a little nitpicky thing. But it's like, bruh, I understand. I know it's one of the more pivotal scenes, but it's like there are so many better scenes in this movie. It's like I've seen this movie several times. It's like, and I know, racist, but it's like, bruh, there are much better scenes in this movie. But I get it. Once again, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Singled out by God as the chosen ones born to rule the land. This was divine intervention. Historians have since argued it was because they had guns.
So once again, it was, let me go ahead and I'll just slow this down because I think he talks so slowly, but he talks so quietly. So it's like, okay, I got to play it at normal speed just so I can hear what this fool has to say. So I'm sorry if this is going to be longer than expected. So just to let y'all know. Go ahead.
Why didn't Africa colonize Europe? That's a very good question
Well, depending on who you talk to, they did. Especially if you talk to, a lot of the pro-blacks here in the United States, they'll say that, they kicked the white folks back to the Caucasus Mountains. And that's where we stayed. And so, basically, allegedly, the Yakubians guarded the borders of Europe to make sure that white folks didn't come back to Africa. So I don't know what you're talking about in terms of why didn't Africa conquer Europe? And of course, who does this fool use?
I've just decided to ask myself, and also borrowed from this book.
I'm sorry, why is this fool, why does he look like the typical type of dude? It's like, oh man, I make my own music. Oh man, look at me. I'm alternative. I got the glasses on, bro. It's like, come on, man. Why do you have to be a fucking stereotype? And of course, we use Yanis Varoufakis. I know a lot. I've never read his stuff. I barely even know who this fool is, but apparently he's another one of these dudes a lot of lefties talk about. I'm sure he has some good points, but overall, you know what? I'm not worried about it. But go ahead, man.
By Yanis Varoufakis. The story of the Afrikaners is just one of many that shows us how Europe went through several stages of civilization, whilst Africa remained the home of small hunter-gatherer societies. What it doesn't tell us is why. Why were the colonizers from Europe so technologically advanced, whilst the indigenous people from Africa had to defend themselves?
I'm gonna skip past this bullshit because he's just gonna do the standard thing of let's use clips of people like No BS and people like Nick Fuentes. Oh, let's use these clips to show how bad they are. It's like, okay, fine. You're so fucking original, dude. I mean, come on,
with
man.
shields and spears. Why did so many nations come out of Europe with the power to invade and conquer, but not a single one came out of Africa?
Well, of course, they stole African technology. Of course, see, this is the whole thing, is that people like this still respond to things in a Eurocentric way. They would, they don't want to hear the pro-blacks. They don't want to hear Nation of Islam. They don't want to hear Nation of Gods and Earth. They don't want to hear these other hoteps and everything else. They will waste their time talking about white nationalism, and they don't want to talk about the other side. That's always going to be the problem. I mean, even people like Vosh, he thought that some bullshit ass, apology because he didn't like black nationalism. I mean, this motherfucker, it's like, come on, man. They can't, that's one of the really bad parts of BreadTube. They don't want to respond to black nationalism. They don't want to talk about black separatism because they don't want to appear racist. Look how much shit that, like I said, once again, I'll mention him, but, people like Vosh took because of it. Oh, well, Marcus Garvey was, a black Nazi and all this. When you start equivocating Nazis and black Nazis because they don't agree with you, it's like, my man, you've already lost. You've already alienated that portion of your audience. So they're either going to listen to you because they want to see how you fuck up, or they're waiting for you to pounce, basically, Go ahead.
I think this is a very important question because the answer to it and the way we arrive at that answer forces us to ask a much bigger question about human nature in general. It forces us to ask the bigger question.
Human nature isn't real. Isn't that the same type of thing that a lot of lefties do? Human nature isn't real. That's wrong. That's, it's a it's a social construct, right? Come on, man. Really? Go ahead.
Why do people do the things that they do? Let's ask some racist people.
I'm gonna skip past this bullshit. There we go.
Philosophy and IQ and bones. Now I know the laws of.
Now I'm gonna go ahead and speed it up. Let me see if I can understand this fool. All right, there we go. Let's do this.
Internet free speech compel me to take this idea seriously, and I know I really should get around to watching Sean's video on the bell curve whilst also reading the book myself to make sure everything's in context. Fuck that.
We don't care about. Go ahead.
In any case, there are intuitive problems with using genetics to explain the success of civilizations, especially when you introduce factors like time. If we look at the First Nation civilizations, we can see there are plenty of things they have in common, but race is not one of them. I mean, you have Greece, Rome, Mesopotamia, and ancient Egypt. That's like 4 different skin tones. And then you have the Golden Age of Islam, when for nearly 5 centuries, the global center of maths, science, and philosophy was Baghdad. This was at the same time when white Christian Europe was stuck in the Dark Ages. The Agricultural Revolution, which was the first big leap of human progress, began in what is now Syria and Iraq, over 5,000 years before it arrived in the UK. If we're going to explain these shifts of cultural dominance, we could probably do with an answer that isn't quite so static as the inherent genetic quality of the races. Explanation number 2, high-level ideas. So this is the explanation which mostly comes from conservatives or classical liberals, who at the very least are not so eager to measure the skulls of their black and brown contemporaries. Their notion is that human history is essentially the history of ideas, and the success or failure of any society hinges upon the intelligence, talents, and morality of those living in them. I'm going to split this explanation up into 2 parts, the individual and the collective. For the individualists, society's course of history is mostly determined by a small number of exceptional, unique, and heroic, or sometimes villainous, characters. The success of the UK during the Industrial Revolution.
Oh boy. All right, let me go ahead and pause this. Number 1, it's like, the thing is, all they can do is respond to the same people. Like I say, I'll continue to repeat this. It's like, oh, Nick Fuentes, that's the new one, newer one. Even though the fact that the dude's on DLive, is that, yeah, he still can bring in like 10K viewers, this and that, in terms of, in terms of a message. But it's like, in general, is he that well respected? This dude's still going on TikTok, this and that. He's still wearing like Hawaiian shirts. I mean, that's the whole, I mean, that's not necessarily an argument against it, but it's like, in terms of aesthetics, you're like, this fool is, it's whatever. But it's like, it's just silly, man. It really is. It's like, Go ahead, man.
Of inventors like James Wyatt and Thomas Savery. For the United States, it would be the founding fathers. This is often referred to as Thomas Carlyle's great man theory, the idea that the history of the world is but the biography.
The thing is, oh yeah, here's what I want to say. There was a big difference because apparently some articles had been written about BreadTube on YouTube, and of course they said it was too white. BreadTube is too white. And so they had people like Suck My Opinion. And people like Suck My Opinion were brought in by people like Peter Coffin, and they were seen as trying to become like sponsors to this black dude. I mean, it's a pitiful neoliberal type of attitude, really. But it's like, oh, we have to bring more black people in. We have to, and of course, more of are these black folks respected as much as their white counterparts? No, I'm sorry. Let's be honest though. Suck My Opinion. When he turned against a lot of the ideas that people like Peter Coffin were talking about and said that cancel culture is bullshit, this and that, he turned away, his sponsor. Now, of course, he's still doing videos on StreamYard, same as me, and putting videos out where he doesn't show his face anymore. I don't have anything against the brother. I really don't. But it's like, my man, it's the same type of thing. It's like, they'll bring them on as tokens. Same thing with people like Black Red Guard. We see E. American Johnson, of course, try to wimp their way out of it and try to talk about black folks, this and that, and say, oh, well, ultimately, you live in Vietnam, fool. You've got a Vietnamese girlfriend or whatever it is, because I think that I've heard that they have an open relationship. But it's like, that's a whole other thing. It's like, man, fuck y'all niggas. What the fuck y'all talking about, man? Y'all aren't inclusive. Y'all don't care about, Go ahead, man.
Of great men. So the more great men there are in a society, the greater that society will be. Why all the great men happen to come from Europe whilst none of them appeared in Africa? No reason. And then we have the collectivist view. In this PragerU video, Ben Genius Shapirium says that the success of the West has been owed to its...
Well, I mean, you could bring up people like Shaka Zulu, who was killed, or you could bring up, plenty of African American thinkers, like people like James Baldwin, for example. I brought up him as much as I don't care for his personality. I'm sure that he was an intelligent man and wrote some intelligent stuff. I've read some of his stuff, but anyway. But of course, we had to. This is a very Western-centric, very Eurocentric view once again. But yeah, go ahead, man.
Unique combination of Greek reason and Judeo-Christian ethics, which were handed down to us by God. Why God chose to only endow certain people with these ideas and why only people in the West were able to properly embrace them? No reason. You can see we come to a bit of a dead end here. If Europe was able to colonize Africa, it's because all the good ideas were in Europe and all the bad ideas were in Africa. And I know that seems like an insane coincidence, but those are the rules that I've just made up. And facts don't care about your feelings. I'm so sorry. I hesitate to use...
Yep. I would love... I'm waiting. I know he's not going to. But he's not going to talk about the other side where, the idea that Yakub created white people on the island of Patmos, this and that. That originally came from Nation of Islam, as far as I know. He's not going to talk about that. He's not going to say a word about it because these motherfuckers don't like to engage in shit like that. It's only... Go ahead. We'll talk about it later.
Use either of these explanations because if I did, there'd be nothing else to talk about. And if I apply this approach to other social phenomena, then I might end up saying things like black crime rates are nothing more than a multitude of bad choices being made disproportionately by black people. That their treatment at the hands of the police has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture.
Once again, why do you keep wasting your time with Ben Shapiro? You realize, why is it that, once again, I'm going to sound like Mickey Rooney now. Why is it like that? But why is it that, you'll have people like Vosh who will be like, oh, I'm not going to give that much attention to this person. And then you're going to do another video on Steven Crowder or another video on Ben Shapiro. It's like, why do you waste your time with people like that? You are giving these folks more ammunition. It's like you're giving him more traffic. Why do you keep responding? It's like, I don't even care about Ben Shapiro, if I'm being honest. I don't care because ultimately he's going to make his money. He's going to find some sort of way to protect himself. Why do you care about people like that? Is that the thing is that they go about attacking these things in the wrong way. They are worried about, people like Ben Shapiro, and it makes your audience into a peanut gallery where it's like, oh, you did another response video to PragerU. Good for you. You did another response video to Ben Shapiro. Cool. and you create an audience that just feeds on that, and you become a caricature. You become you become like the actor that played Tarzan or whatever the case may be. You're typecast in that role. I mentioned this, I think, last night, or this morning, I should say, technically, with Vosh. He said, "Oh, I don't want to do a response video to to Steven Crowder. I don't want to." And it's like, no, my dude, you built your career on this. You built your career on that sort of thing. Why are you now getting mad at it? This is what you built yourself on. It's like, for me, if the next day I said, I don't even know, man. It's like, all I know how to do is be me. But it's like, if I just tried to come out yesterday, it's like, oh, I don't want to do a video where I'm spurging out or something like that. It's like, that's all I know what to do. But the thing is, this is just me. I don't have to, waste my time with it. My mind is so fucked up as it is. What, my dude, whatever, man. It's just these folks just waste their time on people that don't matter, and they're giving them, and in reality, they're giving them more attention and giving them more money than they need. It's the same type of thing. Let me just say this brief little thing, and then we'll cut to the rest of the video. But it's the same type of thing where folks are talking about, where people talk about Eminem back in the day. The GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. They spent so much time, boycotting him and, trying to push Interscope to ban, Marshall Mathers LP for saying, lyrics like, "My words are like a dagger with a jagged edge. I stab you in the head, whether you're a fag or les, homosex, a math or a trans, a vest, pants, a dress. Hate fags." The answer is yes. And what did it do? It helped him sell 10 million CDs. Helped him go diamond. How many artists can, once again, you helped create. You helped create him. That's the whole thing. It's kind of like that Simpsons episode, because that's all we Americans can do. It always comes back to the Simpsons. I'm sure that it's kind of like Godwin's Law, where everything comes back to Hitler. I'm sure there's going to be like the Simpsons law for millennials and for cringy losers, much on the same level as me, where it's like it always comes back to the Simpsons. But the episode, I think it was like the first season or something like that, where Marge was mad about Michelangelo's David because it was Itchy and Scratchy because there was so much violence. And then she was like, "Oh, but I like Michelangelo's David." "Oh, well, what do you do?" And she created this mob that said, "Get your big Italian button," yeah. And it's just, that's one of the more underrated episodes. It's like, but anyway, that's kind of the idea behind this. Anyway, go ahead, man.
And if that sounds a bit vague, then the more inquisitive members of my audience might seek out a more concrete explanation for black people always making bad decisions. Then I'd eventually have to contend with the fact that my audience is full of Nazis. And I'd have to save face by calling them out, and before I knew it, I'd have a bunch of them following me around with smartphones in front of my children, and that would be a bit shit. And just to be fair, I've also seen plenty of leftists make the mistake of simply taking this idea and turning it on its head, arguing instead that indigenous Africans were morally superior, at peace with themselves and with nature, whilst there was the
Yeah, what you're doing is giving the whole noble savage type of argument. Yeah, we know.
Europeans who were tainted by greed and bloodlust. Because again, the problem is, why? Explanation number 3, the environment. Now, by this, I don't mean systemic racism or socioeconomic factors, at least not here. I mean literally the environment and the geography of where civilizations emerged and where they did not. And I feel quite safe offering this explanation because I did not get it from the left. I got it from a classical liberal. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith talks about the first ancient civilizations and why he thinks they appeared in the parts of the world that they did. He noticed that the thing they all had in common was their proximity to the Mediterranean Sea and to inland rivers. In his own words, that sea, by far the greatest inlet that is known in the world, having no tides, nor consequently any waves except such as are caused by the wind only, was, by the smoothness of its surface, as well as by the multitude of its islands, and the proximity of its neighbouring shores, extremely favourable to the infant navigation of the world. When, from their ignorance of the compass, men were afraid to quit the view of the coast, and from the imperfection of the art of shipbuilding, to abandon themselves to the boisterous waves of the ocean. In other words, the boats were shit and the people were betas. The Mediterranean Sea is still...
Once again, it's the same type of thing with giving an audience to people like Peterson. Not Jordan Peterson, but the other, I can't think of it, but yeah, beta guy. It's like, but, you're afraid to use the word coon. You're afraid to use that word coon because you don't want to do that. You'll see, you feel more comfortable by calling him, Uncle Tom, or not even saying those words, but just alluding to those and thinly veiling these insults of him, where it's like, ultimately it's up to the black community to decide what to do with them. Not you, cracker. But yeah, go ahead.
and the weather around it is predictable, which is probably why the first people to start building ships were the Phoenicians in the Middle East and the Carthaginians in North Africa. For a long time, they were the only ones who did. Why does this matter? Because water makes it easier to transport goods, and societies that were able to move freely across water were able to expand trade, giving them access to a rich variety of resources and allowing them to grow. This is why the towns and villages of ancient Egypt were never more than a couple of miles away from the Nile or from the breakup of canals in the south. Europe and the Middle East were able to do the same, with their close network of rivers and inlets such as the Baltic Sea and the Arabian Gulf.
See, the thing is, it's like, bruh, people are just going to be fucking racist. All right, can I just tell you that right now? People are just going to be fucking racist. That, you know, the thing is that you can give all these explanations and you can be highfalutin as much as you want to and dab and say, well, actually, it's this way, or oh, well, it's supposed to be this way. People are still going to be racist, man. You know, or still going to be prejudiced. You know, once again, we've you know, you had I noticed this with the Evergreen. I think that there's that Dr. Lowe. I think she's a doctor anyway, and that she was explaining the difference between, or maybe no, it was a student. Excuse me, it was a student. I think. Anyway, I'm mind my mind my schizophrenia and my my slowly diminishing mind. Anyway, but you know, they were talking about, of course, racism versus prejudice and all that type of thing. Oh well, I'm prejudiced against white people, but this, you know. Oh man, I'm waiting for the other side, which you're not going to talk about, but I know. Go ahead.
People of sub-Saharan Africa had no inlets. Their rivers were few and far between, and it's unlikely any of them were in the mood to navigate the treacherous storms around the Cape of Good Hope. This chapter from Adam Smith is essentially a giant fuck you to the internet classical liberals of today. In no uncertain terms, he says, the difference between the most dissimilar
See,
characters...
the thing is, thinking about it again, with these types of videos is that they waste so much time talking about history and saying, well, this is the true thing of history and this and that. Is that, okay, how does that change from today? And, you know, we see the looting and we see these folks acting a fool and all this type of thing. And they say, and of course, then you'll just say, well, it's just, you know, as people like Vosh will say, oh, well, it's just economic inequality, this and that. If they had more money, then it would be different. And of course, I mean, the thing is that his arguments collapse because ultimately, it's like if he says that native-born Americans are more violent or, you know, are more criminal than first-generation immigrants. This is the argument that he's used. He has used that argument. Then why is it then that somehow changing the environment or changing the economic disparities of African Americans, or whichever you want to say, is going to make a difference? Once again, you know, this is the same type of thing with autos, this and that. What sort of difference is that going to make? You see, you know, because of course, I mean, once reparations comes out, I know damn well you're gonna have a lot of these, and believe me, Autos is still alive. There's still a lot of, you know, black folks who have been in this nation for, you know, 400 or 500 years, and they'll say, hey, why is that African who just came here like last year, why is he getting a check, and I'm not getting one right now? Why is that? So that is automatically going to cause trouble. But of course, people like this are not going to talk about that because they're scared as hell. They're scared as hell. They're not going to do that. And of course, you're going to get people like Black Red Guard who will, you know, if there was violence in the streets because there was some African dude getting money versus a native-born, you know, African American who, you know, born and raised this country, you know, has, you know, several generations behind him who have stayed in this country because it's all they knew, you know. But that's the difference, isn't it? Anyway, go ahead, man.
Between a philosopher and a common street porter, for example, seems to arise not so much from nature as from habit, custom, and education.
Golly,
When they came
okay,
into the
this
world,
is boring.
and for the first 6 or 8
We
years of
don't
their
care
existence,
about Adam
that
Smith.
determines their consciousness.
Oh shit, here we go. You're going to use the, okay.
Classical liberalism is not taking the side of Sargon or Dave Rubin here. He's taking the side of Marx. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their being.
Yeah, I've heard this argument that, you know, Adam Smith was, you know, a proto-Marxist. We get that. Okay.
Their social being that determines their consciousness. But enough from our two daddies. Let's talk about the event that really started to set Africa and Europe apart. What? Agriculture. The agricultural revolution took off around 12,000 years ago when people in the Middle East reined in on hunting and gathering and started to acquire their food through farming. People started farming.
All right. Sometimes it's just really grinding. It's just, I'm not going to sit here for this long. Okay. Holy crap. Okay, here we go. Okay. Now, the history of
At a
capitalism.
higher rate than people were consuming them. For the first time in history, humans now had access to something called a surplus, an excess of production. This one small addition to human life gave rise to gathered societies, which were mostly egalitarian. But the rulers were still outnumbered by their subjects. Did not. Now, notwithstanding that Columbus was a genocidal maniac with a very cringe gold obsession, but it is true that far more people in the Americas and Australia were killed by disease than by the sword or the gunfire of the invaders. Even if the settlers came in peace, a hug or a handshake from one of them would have been enough to wipe out an entire village. For the ones with more sinister intentions, this was their first chance to engage in biochemical war. Most famously, when a group of European settlers nearly wiped out an entire Native American village by gifting them with 2 blankets and 1 handkerchief, which they knew had come unwashed from a smallpox infirmary. Now, this is where someone with a bit more self-control would be like, done. Agriculture started where it did because it had to, and the surpluses it created brought a whole bunch of other things that propelled society forwards in a way that hunting and gathering could not. People in Australia, even if they wanted to, couldn't adopt agriculture because the island lacks the necessary flora and fauna to do so. But
the thing is that people like this, I'm just gonna say once again, it. These are bug people. I don't know. I'm just doing character assassination now. I'm sorry, but it's like the thing is that you have to dig to the root of things here a bit. This guy will talk all day about, I'm dabbing on the racists or I'm dabbing on these folks and I'm giving the true element of history here, this and that. But the minute that you have black folks who say, yeah, black is beautiful and, we're going back to Africa, this and that, and we don't want you crackers around. And the minute that type of shit happens, you would be the first one that will be crying and say, no, we can help you in this country. Oh, no. So don't give me that shit. Don't give me that, This is all just very performative. Because, the thing is that people like, your ideas are attached to liberalism. They're attached to this idea that we can all get along, this and that. And guess what? Those ideas are crumbling around you, And as much as, I'll speak from an Americentric point of view. But the thing is that to a point, in the United States is that, there will be collaboration between whites and blacks or whites and Hispanics or whites and Asians. But guess what? I know deep down when worst comes to worst, my peoples come first. So black folks are going to go with the black folks and say, hey, man, let's, we going to hook up with you, my brother. They're always going to feel more comfortable because guess what? That's the cultural idea. Brothers can know each other like that. Even, Hispanics, same way. Even if Puerto Ricans and El Salvadorans and Puerto Ricans don't get along, they'll get along because they have a common culture. They have a common idea. And like I said, once again, that's not great. That's not necessarily race, but it comes from culture. Now, of course, I'm sure that they'll say, but my culture, but that's a racist argument too. But, man, I'm sorry. This is just really grinding. I thought this was going to be more interesting. This is grinding. Okay.
You can already sense someone jumping in and saying something like, hey, Mr. Box, you do realize that there were agricultural societies in sub-Saharan Africa before the Europeans arrived. Why didn't they build empires? Was it the socio-economic factors, you fucking beta? Signed, Tyler Durden, AK-47. Okay. There was agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa before the Europeans arrived. But there's another problem here. If you look at Africa on a map, the land mostly goes north and south, whereas in Europe and Asia, it spreads east and west and for a much larger distance. Why does this matter? Climate changes dramatically as you move north and south, whereas it stays relatively consistent if you move from east to west. A society in Zimbabwe could have done well, but would have had very little room to expand. Move south, and
thing is, they need, once again, they need the groypers, the few thousand groypers that are way beyond the whole zeitgeist, if you will. They need those people to respond to them. That way they can defend those ideas that people are still using the brackets and all that. Give me a break. Who realistically, apart from boomers like Varg, still use that? It's like most people are smart enough, I say that, but I don't go in the comment section to people like, I don't know, whoever, but it's just so ridiculous. People have, for the most part, have moved on, but yeah, go ahead.
They would end up in the stormy coast, move north, and they'd have to go through dense rainforests, the equator, and over 1,000 miles of desert. People in Europe could trade for thousands of miles across the Silk Road. They could invade neighboring villages, steal their wealth and technologies, and eventually build empires. Well, what about the empires in China, India, the Middle East, and South America? Why did they all fall behind the West? How do you explain the Industrial Revolution then? Sincerely, Cthulhu Dick 1350. Part, the Industrial Revolution. Historian Kenneth Pomeranz wrote about how East Asia and Europe were more or less on par with each other until the mid-18th century. They had the same life expectancies, and their economies were very similar. Pomeranz even argues that China's economy was more of a libertarian free market than any in Europe. But around 1760, the Industrial Revolution took off in Britain and spread across Europe. As their economies boomed, Asia fell behind. This split became known as the Great Divergence. So how do people try to explain this? Well, in a book called A Farewell to Alms, A Brief Economic History of the World, Gregory Clark argued that the Industrial Revolution was owed in large part to demographics. That is, to the remarkably high birth rates of the British upper class. As they formed an increasingly large proportion of Britain's demographic makeup, they were able to spread their superior genes and work ethic through the general population. The problem with this claim was there wasn't any evidence for it. Clark did make the effort to show that the upper classes had above average birth rates. What he seemed to forget was that this was the case for most of Europe and Asia, for the very obvious reason that infant mortality rates were lower for rich people. Now, there are some cultural explanations that are a bit more valid here. The German sociologist Max Weber makes a very strong case in showing that capitalism developed more quickly in Protestant nations than it did in Catholic ones, mostly because of the Protestant work ethic and the tendency for Protestants to turn Catholic holidays.
Protestantism by changing almost all the traditional holidays and work days. Yeah. Once again, I mean, this is an interesting thing with Protestantism. Once again, is I know that people like there were German anarchists who talked about Protestantism as well, who really, they praise Protestantism because of the way it changed things. Yeah, by changing almost all the traditional holidays into work days. I mean, once again, Protestantism is kind of a loose term, but yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Into working days. But even Weber himself always stressed the importance of remembering that these outcomes are not intentional. Instead, the compatibility of Protestantism with capitalism was simply an unintended consequence. Now, the list of possible reasons for the Great Divergence is very long, but probably the most obvious one is coal. As it turns out, coal was much more abundant in Europe than it was in Asia, and the country that had its coal closest to the surface and in the highest concentration was Britain. This gave them an incentive to industrialize quickly, whereas France and Germany, who had to buy their coal at a higher rate from the UK, were a bit less inclined. Okay, one more thing. Some people have argued that the Great Divergence actually started long before the Industrial Revolution. You can kind of see this when you look at the UK because there's an upward trend that starts.
Well, this is one of those videos that goes on for this amount of time and really says nothing. It's just, I've read books. I'm smart. That's all this is. This is, I've read books and I'm going to use quotes that I think will work. And I'm smart. That's all this is. Go ahead.
Around the 1500s. The answer to this is, once again, water. Coming back to Adam Smith, Britain's position as an island surrounded by fairly safe waters gave them a very strong trading advantage over their European neighbours. Smith talks about how 8 men on a ship could move from London to Edinburgh, carrying as many goods as 100 men, with 50 wagons drawn by 400 horses could from Calais to Bordeaux. And the benefits of water don't stop there. On a continent riddled with wars and invasions, European countries had to spend a lot of their money on military defence. But for the British to defend themselves, they mostly had to build boats. They got very good at this very quickly, and by the 18th century, the British Navy was the strongest in the world. When it came to building colonies, the British were able to spend hundreds of years extracting wealth and resources from around the world, and when they had to, they could very easily fight off their weaker competitors along the way. The Afrikaners I mentioned at the beginning of this only ended up on Zulu turf because they were forced inland by the British Navy. They commanded the seas, all thanks to the 20 miles of water that separated it from the mainland. The answer to the question I posed at the beginning of this video is not in the genes or in the culture, it's in the water. Human history is 4/5 water. What have we learned here today? The geographical conditions of Europe and Asia forced people to cultivate the land in a way that Africa and Australia could not. The surplus that resulted gave way to the rise of writing, cities, states, technology, and armies. It equipped them with ships to cross the oceans and armed them with not just weapons, but the biochemical...
Once again, I don't even disagree with his premises. I'll admit in this response, I just turned to character assassination and just cringe. But ultimately, it's just like, well, what did this really do? It's like, okay, so you showed, all more racists and all this type of thing. People like, no bull and no bullshit, and people like Nick Fuentes. Okay, Nick Fuentes, has lost a lot of relevance. You're talking about, or you're talking about people like Ben Shapiro, who, like I say, once again, they're protected. All right, and that's not just because he happens to be Hebrew. He's protected because he has a business. He works in Hollywood, this type of thing. So he's insulated. He doesn't even worry about people like you. And the thing is, once again, you do this and you'd rather dab on people like them because you don't want to talk to ordinary people and try to convince them, because it's easier for you to put out videos. The same thing with people like Vosh. They're too lazy to go out there and talk to ordinary people, and they know that that they're alienated. They themselves are alienated from the ordinary people because they know that they could try to have a conversation with these folks and they would lose. I mean, I did see Peter Coffin's recent video where he, I think, admits in some way that, he, through getting shitted on so much on Twitter and everything else, that he had to admit he was going to debate Milo Yiannopoulos. And that's hilarious. But the thing is that he admitted that it's easier to talk to conservatives than it is talking to lefties. That goes to show, once again, it's like, once again. But this is sadly the turn that they make. is they would rather put out a 24, almost a 25-minute video where they would rather just waste their time. Oh, here we go.
Power to breathe death upon their enemies. When they arrived on the coast of southern Africa and Australia, the natives who had been living off the land for thousands
All right, here we go. Let's finish this up.
of years didn't stand a chance. And even the most laborious of the skull measuring classes are willing to concede that people, like animals, adapt to their environments. The people in Europe and Africa adapted to radically different environments, and the societies that spawned out of them
Yeah, thank you for talking about zoology. Yeah, go ahead.
were the products. This is why Africa could never have colonized Europe. And I know this doesn't necessarily answer every question there is on racial inequalities and social problems and all that, but I hope that for anyone who sincerely wants an explanation to racial disparities in the present day, you should hopefully now know where to look. Now go ahead and
There's a lot more than that, but okay. Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
like and subscribe and leave a comment. If you have some money that you think should belong to me, consider supporting me on Patreon or hand me a donation on PayPal. If you didn't like this video and just want to say something nasty, well, here's a picture of my face in profile with annotations to give you a head start.
Nah. I barely tried to assassinate your character, sir. But yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. Let me go ahead and check this right quick. Oh, okay. Louisville footage. Okay, sounds good. Okay, there we go. All right, so there we go, yeah. How did Rhodesia turn out? How did these pesky Anglos, achieve so much in a continent that like Africa had a north-south orientation? It just, it's a very simple. It's a very simple video, isn't it? It's basically it's just north and south, and they waste so much time talking about other aspects that it could have been done. That could have been done in like 5 minutes, and just said, well, it was just the north and south axis. Axis versus, an east-west axis. That's all they could have said. That's all they need to say. But instead, they covered up with all this fake let's use clips and everything else like that. It's just boring more than anything else. It really is. It's literally just boring stuff. You're just like, okay, who cares? Yeah. All these premises are too materialistic. Europeans exceed because they put value on youth over ancestors, hence the development of youthful genius. Yeah, sorry there. There we go. Are you done? Okay, thank you. All right. So yeah, I was just gonna say that's how these. Like I said, this loner box guy, he was promoted by Vosh because he did a video about the actual statistics that are used and talking about the rape gangs in the United Kingdom, these Muslim rape gangs, this and that. And of course, basically, it's just Anglo does it too and everything else. So, like I say, I mean, that was a somewhat okay video, I would say. But this type of, is it now he shows his anarchist colors, this and that. And it's just, the thing is, eventually, I think these bread tubers and these folks that broadly speak about these issues. Okay, yeah, all right. Well, anyway, that's what I was going to say. But I guess, as they say, life goes on. So I respond to that. Let's continue on with our day. And I got some other things to do, so I just figured I'd do that. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed it. See you later. Goodbye.